Hey, welcome back to the Raj and Drew Show for Entrepreneurs. I'm so happy to be here with my good friend Raj. Raj, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Drew. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
Wonderful. It's a great day, and we have a fantastic topic to discuss today. We're going to talk about the 15 qualities or 15 traits of a successful entrepreneur or small business leader. So these traits you discovered over time through an assessment, but why don't you just tell how you came up with these traits, how you've used these traits with your clients, and then I want to go through these traits and really understand and unpack for the audience what these traits are, and maybe even some ways that people can increase their ability in these certain areas. So, Raj, tell us, where did these 15 qualities come from?
So the first thing, I have to give you an example from my prior career in GE. I'm going to take a couple of minutes to help you. I was a Six Sigma Master Black Belt quality leader, and we used to bring a lot of wonderful, outstanding people into the program. This was an 18 to 24 program where there would be a Six Sigma Black Belt, Master Black Belt for 18 to 24 months, and they would rotate back into the business.
Okay.
And all of these people who were getting into the program were outstanding people. They were very, very successful in whatever they were doing before the program. But what I noticed was when I got into the program, there were some people who really excelled and some people were mediocre at best.
Okay.
And my whole curiosity was at that time started and said, why? So I thought it was coaching. That's the reason why I spent a lot of time learning the coaching skills and becoming a better coach to help some of them.
Okay.
And in the whole process, what I learned was there are certain behaviors and driving forces each person has inherently in themselves. And those are some of the things. So every job can be matched to certain traits so that they can be a win-win situation and they're really motivated and they become very, very good. That is where my aha moment came back way back in 2000, 2002, 3. And I continued working on that. And then I took it upon a hobby to see basically how many of the small business owners. There are so many people who are very successful, who built a business and really grew them. And there are some people who really struggle or they get stuck at $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, depending on that. So that is where I was very curious and did a lot of assessments to really understand. And based on all the people I have met, all the analysis I have done over the last 15 years, these competencies came to the surface.
Okay. Okay. So you took this assessment that you do with your clients, that it's got emotional intelligence, it's got personality, behavior style stuff, motivation, what kind of motivates you. And we're going to jump into the different traits here in a moment, but you took these assessments and you figured out what the correlation is, I guess, or what qualities across the board of the successful entrepreneurs, what character qualities they had. That's kind of how you put it together.
Yes. So if you look at it in the total, there are almost like 49 traits any person has, and that is what we evaluate people on. When there is an assessment, this particular assessment I use has got 49 different elements. Of the 49, I was trying to go back and see what would come to the surface and what combination. If you look at 49, you can have millions of permutations and combinations of those things. But I really looked at it and said, what are some of those things that come to the surface? And I started noticing a pattern where people have built their business very successful. I had people who built their business from scratch to 2 million. I had people who built their business to 20 million, to 100 million, to almost $1 billion.
Wow.
So I had all sorts of people to see, and these are some of the things that came to the surface. So the one I'm talking about right now is basically 15 out of the 49 which came to the surface, and there was some significance to that.
That's great. So this isn't, what you're saying is this isn't 15 rules that Raj came up with in his experience, or 15 ideas that Raj had one day and he wrote them down and said, these will be great for you. This is actually research-based. This is from people who are successful entrepreneurs. And you took the time, the energy, and the effort to figure out what they had in common as far as from a traits standpoint, leadership traits. And that's how we came up with this list of 15.
Yes, that is exactly how we came up with it. So it was not active, it was passive basically we call it secondary research. So we went back and looked at all the people who have done and what the research showed us based on their assessments already done and comparing it with some of the successes they had.
Okay, perfect. So when we talk about the various traits, really there are three buckets that we're going to talk about, and we have driving forces, behaviors, and then competencies. Can you kind of break those down for us? Let's maybe start with driving forces. What does that mean, driving forces?
So basically, every person inherently is motivated internally to do something.
Okay.
It is almost like, why does Drew get up in the morning on Monday morning and does what he does? What does Raj do? So each one of us has certain driving forces, and that is manifesting in their day-to-day life. When the job or the career they choose is aligned with it perfectly, then they're very excited and everything seems to be like a play.
Okay. Fulfillment and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So driving forces is all about the inherent motivation that comes from it. That is what a driving force is. It drives you on a day-to-day business.
Okay, so we have driving forces, kind of those motivators, and then behaviors. So these are just what you demonstrate in your day-to-day life. We work with various people. Some people are more in your face, maybe with their behaviors. Some people are highly competitive in the workplace. Others are maybe more passive, more patient, different behaviors. So when we talk about behaviors, is that kind of what we're talking about?
Exactly. Basically, how do they show up on a daily basis and how do they behave plays a big role.
Okay.
And inherently, there are 4 behaviors that came to the top during the thing, and they were correlated to the success these people had as entrepreneurs.
Great. Okay, so we have 4 driving forces, 4 behaviors, and then we've got 7. So if we have math, 15 total, but 7 competencies, and those would just be like, hey, you're competent at Word or creating at Excel or something like that. You have a skill set. Obviously, we're not talking about those kind of specific things, but tell me about competencies and maybe explain what those are.
No, but you're perfectly aligned and ready because you have learned and gained a mastery over a skill. See, the biggest part of competency is it is a skill. And the good news is skills are very easy to learn. They're teachable, learnable, and practicable.
Okay.
So these are some of the things that people gain over a period of time. So some people are inherently born with it for whatever reason, they're comfortable with it, and some people train. So for the way I look at it is these competencies are very, very critical for somebody to go be successful in the small business world and as an entrepreneur.
Okay. This is exciting. I hope everybody's ready. I think we've explained where these traits come from, why they're important. They're research-based. We didn't just make these up. And then we've kind of defined the different motivators, driving forces, behaviors, and competencies. With that, I think we should just jump right in. Raj, you want to kick it off? Okay, kick it off wherever you want to start.
So I always go back and say from a competencies perspective. And and let us see where we go with that, and then I'll talk about the other aspects. So if you look at one of the competency is self-starting. So self-starting is, do you take and do you have learned how to take the initiative?
Yes.
If you look at entrepreneurs, nobody's telling them to get up Monday morning and do certain things or do certain things.
Yeah.
They have to have their self-starting ability. And that is very, very critical for the successful entrepreneurs or small business owners and leaders.
Absolutely. And that seems pretty basic. Like that's almost a trait that everybody would notice from an entrepreneur, is that they went out and did something. They went out and I used to knock on doors and offer to wash people's cars in the neighborhood because I want to make money. As a little kid. I mean, I was 8 or 10 years old and I was knocking on doors and doing that. And so that self-starting is one of those competencies that you just, I think probably everybody would think of self-starter when they think of an entrepreneur. So that's great, but that's something that every person out there, maybe if they're considering being an entrepreneur, that you need to gain. You said gain mastery over this skill.
Yes. So the mastery I tell people is sometimes you're not in a mood, you don't have the energy, but you still go back and finish the task. That is mastery for me in self-starting.
Okay. So it's the discipline really to go out there and do it.
Yes. So the next one I would go back and talk about is creativity and innovation.
Okay.
And here I want to tell, and my definition of creativity is coming up with great ideas, brainstorming and coming up with great ideas. Innovation is taking that idea and executing it into a product or service so that it is generating money.
Yeah.
So that is how a lot of people use the word creativity and innovation interchangeably.
Yeah.
But an entrepreneur always has both. They're very creative. They come up with a lot of great ideas. They watch something, they come up with an idea. Then they go back and put the self-starting and saying, you know what can I do to convert this into a product, into a service, or whatever it is, so that they start generating money. That is the second piece of it.
Yeah, a mentor of mine, he talked about kind of the innovation piece. He was an entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur. He would look to other industries, right, outside of his own. And that's where he would get these innovative ideas, because he would say, hey, that works great over there. I wonder if a form of that will work in our business, and then kind of borrow that idea. And that gives them almost a launch pad to bring innovation into the industry that he's in. So yeah, that's great. I'd say it's creativity, innovation, self-starting. Let's keep this going. This is great.
And the third one I would talk about is continuous learning.
Absolutely.
So one of the biggest things which people have to focus on is they're learning from everything. And a lot of people go back and really learn from their failures and say, why did it happen? But the biggest part of the learning is, if something good has happened, what can we learn and replicate it as well? A lot of people don't pay attention to that. But entrepreneurs are always looking for the good and saying, oh, this worked very well here. Just the example what you have given. And even during my GE days, when I was working in GE, I worked with GE aircraft engines. I worked with GE Capital. I worked with GE Lighting. And I was carrying a lot of best practices across.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest strength I brought to the table when I was moving around different business units and really spreading the message.
Yeah. Well, and when you think about continuous learning, what comes to mind for me is, one of the most prolific entrepreneurs of our day, Elon Musk. And I saw him interviewed about jets and jet engines, and the person asked him, like, how did you learn about this? And he said, I just started reading books. Everything I could find, every book I could find on the topic, I started reading about it. And he self-taught himself, right? So he can have, we're not saying he can, go create or design them. He has engineers that work for him and all that kind of stuff. But he can have an intelligent conversation about the topic, and because he's chosen to continuously learn. I think that's so good. Patrick Bet-David, another entrepreneur, he talks about it all the time. Find every book that has over 1,000 stars or 1,000 reviews on Amazon on 4 topics, marketing, leadership, and that's his prescription for being successful as an entrepreneur. So that continuously learning has been huge in his life as well. So man, I'm really seeing the connection point between the research you did, and then just in my own personal experience, that being validated through many other entrepreneurs out there and kind of what they're talking about. It's so cool that you were able to create this list based on research though. So awesome.
That is the beauty of this. The alignment was so great.
Yeah.
And I could see that. I can share examples after examples. Once we finish everything else, I can share a few examples. But if you look at George Washington, the first president, right, for US.
Yeah.
If you look at it, if you read his biography or anything that has been written, he had a board of advisors where one expert was talking to him about technology or science. Some people of that. So he was not a learned man. He was a smart man, but he always bought these people. So he didn't have the time to read books like Elon Musk, but he had people every day talking about it.
Yeah.
And in Indian history, Akbar was one of the greatest kings who ruled India. And he never went to school in his life. He never had any formal education. But he united India for the first time as one empire. Very, very famous. But you know what? Every single day, he had an hour or 2 session with all the learned people around him. Every single day, that was his learning.
Okay.
And that's the reason why that continuous learning comes so much. I was so fascinated when I read about the history and how these kings, because that was way back 500 years ago or something in India when the ruler ruled, and he had that. George Washington, 300 years plus ago, and he was having the same philosophy.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why it validated and basically I could see the validation and said, yeah, I have so many examples to showcase.
Right. Yeah, it's fantastic. So, I mean, these 15 leadership traits that we're talking about, we're just in the competencies about halfway through. Give us number 4 and keep this going. This is gold. This is great stuff.
Decision making. Just imagine if an entrepreneur cannot make timely decisions.
Yeah.
Either they lose a lot of time or they lose a lot of money. So they have to be there. So decision making is very, very critical as well. That comes.
Absolutely. You can't be afraid to make a decision. You gotta, that's usually people are afraid to make the decision, but an entrepreneur, successful small business leader has to be able to make that decision and move forward. And usually by the time they get, I had a mentor tell me, by the time a decision gets to your desk at that level, right? You're in the C-suite, you're in the owner of the company. It's a 51-49 decision. You know, it's not, it's no longer an easy decision. It could go either way. And that's why you're in the seat you're in, is because you have to make a judgment call and make the decision, move forward, and live with the consequences. So I like that decision making. Okay.
Yes. And the next one is futuristic thinking, because every single entrepreneur should have a vision. If not, they don't even get started. And that is the futuristic thinking. They need to look at the present, from growing the business, making the money, everything, but they always have their eye on the future. What is going to happen 3 years from today, 5 years from today? And they're constantly balancing act between the present and the future. And that futuristic thinking is where really will distinguish all the successful entrepreneurs from not so successful entrepreneurs.
Interesting. Okay, so that makes sense. The vision piece of it, looking forward. Is there anything, like when you've been having conversations with people over the years, maybe they're great in most all these areas, but the futuristic thinking isn't there? Is that ever a problem, or is it almost across the board? If you're an entrepreneur, you've got futuristic thinking as one of your competencies.
If you are successful, that was a very high score for them. If they were not so successful, basically it was mediocre company. I could see the correlation there.
Okay. Can people develop, how do people develop that? Because they can develop the skill of looking in the future, of thinking about the possibilities of tomorrow. How have you helped people do that in the past?
So the biggest part of it is, what I noticed is there are 20% to 30% of the people who are very, very good just in thinking about it, but they don't know the execution piece.
Okay.
There is another 20 to 30% who are excellent in execution, but they can't think about it. So that is the self-realization we need to do back.
Yeah. Yes.
So when I work with them, we look at their score, we give them enough information to work on that piece of it. And if we feel like that is not there, they at least have the right-hand person, left-hand person, number 2, number 3, whoever it is, somebody on his staff is very, very good to complement them.
Okay.
And that way they have that required piece of it, that trait in the leadership team to work with.
Okay.
And the second part of it is, you can have a vision, but it is not just vision for the business, but it is a vision for your products, vision for your services, looking around what is the environment, what is the future. Like one of the questions I always ask is, what is your who is the customer for you 5 years from today? Is it the same customer you have today or not? And what do you think their habits will change 5 years from today? If they're not thinking, like Chat GPT, right? That is a big one which came in the last 3 months, 4 months. I would put a bet, I have so many people I know who are writers, editors, who has a career built into that. A lot of their business model has to change. If not, they will be out of business.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to learn how to leverage the technology. And this isn't the first time we've done this, right?
Exactly.
We had horse and buggy, and then we had the combustion engine, and we had vehicles, and the people that maybe made saddles, or they made buggies, they either transitioned into the new market that's available and use their skills, leverage them to service these new vehicles, or they died. I mean, it's what we talked about in a prior episode, change or die. You've got to change or you're going to die. And so these people can say, hey, what is the unique thing that I do that ChatGPT can't do? And you figure that out, you solve for that, and now you have a entry in the marketplace. And the other thing that's funny about that company is I think they've been in the laboratory working on that for like 7 to 10 years. I mean, it's been, it was one of those, overnight success, 15 years in the making type thing. And that's, I believe, part of the reason why ChatGPT in particular has been so successful is they already had backing from companies like Microsoft. And so they had those conversations and been working on that for years. Okay, let me run through these competencies real quick for anybody taking notes. I'll hit those first 5 that Raj just shared. So you want to gain mastery so you can get better. These are skills you can get better. You want to gain mastery over self-starting, creativity and innovation. Number 3, continuous learning. Number 4, decision-making. Number 5, futuristic thinking. And Raj, give us number 6.
Understanding others. Remember, when we are an entrepreneur, we are in a business, we are dealing with people day in and day out. Yeah. Customers, stakeholders, employees, suppliers, consultants, whoever you talk about it is. So you definitely need to really understand people at a deeper level, not as a surface level, but at a deeper level. Mm-hmm. What motivates my employees? What behaviors do they have? How is it aligned with what they're working on? Who is the right person to work with? So that understanding others is very, very critical so that their communication can be very, very effective and productive.
Yeah, that's powerful because I always tell people when I'm working with leaders, I tell them, if you have a message that you need to communicate to a team member, it's in your own best interest to figure out the way that they will receive the message the best. Right? Yes. Because ultimately you want them to think about something, or you want them to change a behavior, or you want to update them on information or the new priority. And so if you love sending emails, but they respond faster to texts because that's just what they use and that's their medium, I'm going to text that person, even though I like emails, because a text is going to hit them so much faster and be more effective. So that's that piece of understanding others and then modifying your approach based on the preferences of others. And some people might get upset and say, no, they should mold to me. Well, you can wait around and for the whole world to stop and try to do things your way, or you can modify your approach and get things done, which sounds like an entrepreneur mindset, which is what's the fastest way to take off, and understanding others is huge.
Yeah. And now you look at self-starting is number 1 because of that. They take the initiative, they make it happen because they need to get the things going.
Absolutely.
And that is where they understand people. And the last one is leadership. Leadership here means basically setting a tone, setting a vision, and really rallying the troops and motivating them to go back and join forces. It can be a new customer telling them to take a risk on your new product, or it is a new employee telling them to come and join their startup. All of that is, but they need to set up a vision and share that vision and help sell the vision so that people are aligned and help them to work with.
Yeah.
And that is the leadership piece.
Well, and what you're describing to me when I hear it is really leadership buy-in, the ability to get others to buy in, which a great definition that I like of leadership is knowing where you want to go and getting others to go with you. And, because knowing where you want to go alone is not enough. It's necessary. You have to have that because what are people buying into? But the ability to get people to buy into where it is you're going it's the foundation. It's really the definition of leadership is to get others to buy into where you're going. So wonderful. Okay. So we've got these 7. Let's jump into, are we going to do driving forces next? Or are we going to do
let's go to the driving forces. This is the motivation behind everything we do. And
so we have 4 driving forces.
Yeah. So the first one I want to talk about is intentional. Intentional is you have the right intentions and you're focused on helping others. And this is very critical because as an entrepreneur, they're trying to solve problems, but they don't want to be so scattered and do anything and everything, but they're so focused and they're very intentional where they spend the time and who they help.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why the intentional is so important. Like when you go back and doing a small business, the biggest part of it is identifying your ideal customer. That is the fastest way for you to become successful and profitable. So for that ideal customer, you need to be very intentional, developing the products, services, everything to help that group of people, not everybody else.
Yeah.
So you don't want the shiny object syndrome moving from one to the other, and you waste a lot of time and resources.
Okay, that makes sense. And that also, I could see some of the challenges with that as an entrepreneur tries to develop their team. I think there's been entrepreneurs throughout history, Steve Jobs, that are maybe known as being kind of a jerk, and I could see if you are highly intentional, highly focused on what it is you're trying to do, and others aren't as focused or as intentional, they excel in different areas or have different driving forces, that gap could bring on a lot of frustration in the work environment for the entrepreneur with their team. Have you seen that before? Am I making that up, or
No.
Is that something you've seen before?
No, I've seen a lot of examples. In fact, I'm coaching a CEO right now. He has been in business for 7 years, but he offers almost like 10 different, very disjoint products and services.
Okay.
He does coaching, he does leadership, he does financial planning, he services insurance.
Wow. Yeah, he's the one-stop shop.
And he feels that is the way I can go back and maximize and grow.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, people will be turned off because they really don't know where your energy is and what do you stand for.
Yeah.
And that has been a battle for him. And after 7 years, he's still not profitable. Fortunately for him, he has enough financial resources to be in the business. An average business person would have been out of business.
Yeah.
But if you look at that, there are so many people, basically, that is where they lose, saying that, you know what, I got one insurance client, so let me go to insurance. Or I got one client for here, let me go back. So the beginner's luck, they think it is a process. And that is the difference. They need to go back and look at it. And that sets a nice segue for our next one, which is resourceful.
Okay.
And resourceful is very important. Resourceful means you're always having an eye on the bottom line. Basically, what is the return on my investment? It can be money, it can be my time, it can be my resources, it can be anything.
Okay.
But you need to have a focus on that. And I'll give you a personal example from my own life. A friend of mine created a program called Career Coaching for Students. I really was fascinated with it. So I joined him and we created a robust process. He did 80% of the work, I did 20% of the work. But the program was outstanding for high school students to really help them plan their careers and go to college.
Okay.
The program was one of the best. Both my kids went to the program. Both of them are doing very, very successful today. But when I tried to go back and sell it to everybody else, in 11 months, I sold to one customer. They were willing to spend $1,000 on a baseball glove or a baseball bat, but they would not spend $600 for this product.
Okay.
And the time that it takes about 6 to 8 hours to go through this. So I could not find after 11 months.
Yeah.
And that is the reason I said, you know what? I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah.
And that is when I said, you know what? I'm not getting my return on my investment on time because I'm not spending money on anything. It was more of my time. And then I made it into a hobby after that. And I just moved on to a different aspect of it. So a good entrepreneur does that. They're resourceful. They're looking at it, test the market, look at it if it's going to work or not. No, there is no ROI. There is no money. Let us go back and put it aside and go after something else.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. I like that. So intentional, it's a driving force. It's a motivation. Being resourceful. It's a motivation. It's a driving force. You're thinking about it when you wake up in the morning is the example you gave. Okay. What's the third one here?
Third one is, we call it commanding.
Okay.
The commanding, I relate it to more like the Texas Lone Ranger. In Texas, you have a lot of Lone Rangers, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I was driving down the road today and I saw a Lone Ranger welder. He had his whole welding company, basically, because I worked with folks that have done this. He's got a welder on the back and he takes his basically business on the back of his truck everywhere he goes and fixes fences and welds pipe for different people. So that's that Lone Ranger right there.
Yeah. So these are the people who would like to control their destiny. And they are very comfortable taking the unbeaten path.
Okay.
As an entrepreneur, if you look at the mindset of the general population, go to college, get a nice degree, get a nice job, retire. That is what
Absolutely.
most of the
Yeah.
people think of it. But for an entrepreneurship, they need to struggle a lot. They start up, there is a lot of risk involved in starting a business, financial risk, career risk, mental health risk, whatever you call it. So
stress, type A personality, the stress and blood pressure.
Exactly. And that is where the commanding comes, is they're very comfortable making those tough decisions. They're very comfortable taking the lone range. Like when I resigned my role from GE in 2008 to start my own business, some of my best friends thought I was the most craziest person in the world.
Yeah.
But I had to overcome a lot of those things to even go back and make the decision to go back and start my own business.
Yeah.
And the commanding has to be high enough for those people. Be a lone ranger, make the tough decisions, take the beaten path, whatever it is, and overcome all the obstacles to reach their goal. So that commanding strong and the strength, the internal ego strength, I say, not in a bad way, but in a positive way. They need to have that ego strength so that they can
self-belief.
Yeah, self-belief.
Yeah.
That is the third piece of it from a commanding perspective.
That's great. That's fantastic. I really, once again, you can see how that is a motivator. Because you would ask yourself, what is wrong with us, Raj? What is wrong with business owners, entrepreneurs that we have to go through that struggle, you know? And I know it's because of the big payoff, right? It's this idea that, yes, I could go the safe route, but there's such a great payoff out here if I'm able to make this happen. Plus just the personal gratification that comes with creating something from nothing. So, man, I'm getting fired up. I think everybody listening is probably just getting fired up in their car right now or in their office. They're excited. Maybe you're an entrepreneur, you have your small business, you're leading it. Maybe you're considering starting a side hustle, going out and starting something new, an idea that you have, like the app that you know, I've been working on and talking to folks about, which I talked to somebody recently in the restaurant industry, and they thought it was a fantastic idea. It got me so fired up, right?
Exactly.
And that's kind of what you live on at this stage when you're an entrepreneur. When you're starting something, you're living not on cash coming in initially. You're living on this idea of a dream, and when people get it, when you present what it is you're trying to do, but that's us, right? That's what makes us unique and different. Okay, so those are driving forces: intentional, resourceful, commanding, and then number 4,
receptive. Receptive is being open and curious to new ideas. So you start off with something, but you're always paying attention to what is coming around. What are you learning from the process and what everybody else is saying? Like you said, one of your Elon Musk example, he reads a lot of different books.
Yeah.
So the same way, we need to be receptive to open ideas. Some of the ideas might be from our basically strengths or our successes, or it can be even from our failures, setbacks. So, but receptive is always constantly keeping yourself open and listening and seeing what it is and whatever you can take to help your process improve and better.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why if you see a lot of successful entrepreneurs, they always have coaches, they have trainers, they have consultants. There's so many people. They're receptive and they're open to different ideas to come and help them so that they can accelerate what they want to do.
Yeah. No, that it goes back to the, you know, who are the 5 people? You're going to be the average of the 5 people around your life. You know, that old mantra. By virtue of having people that are around your life, that speak into your life, that give you different ideas, that give you a different viewpoint, that in and of itself is going to make you more successful in the leadership role and as an entrepreneur leader as well. So that's great. Okay. Excellent. So those are the driving forces. That's what gets you moving, gets you motivated and out there doing it. We talked about driving forces. We talked about competencies. So all we have left now are the behaviors of a successful entrepreneur, small business leader.
Yes. And the first one is competitiveness. They have to be competitive. Because in this business, if they're not competitive, if they have a little bit of a laid back, they cannot survive. Okay.
You got to be out there. You've got to have that competitive mindset. You're out there fighting, trying to win. Trying to it's interesting too, the competitive nature. You know, maybe that's why some pro athletes, you know, after they retire are successful entrepreneurs. I think of Casey, I can't think of his last name, but Movement Mortgage is a former tight end that went out and he created this fantastic mortgage company. And I imagine it's that competitive drive, that competitive nature that pushes him out there to be successful. It's a behavior that so what if someone is a little more laid back, they're not as competitive, how do you help somebody develop that?
So one of the pieces of it is first the heightened awareness piece of it.
Okay.
So you can always be competitive for short periods of time if it's not natural to you, but still you have some competitiveness. If not, you would not be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So you go back and plan and be much more proactive. What I call here is you need to have basically the conscious competency here.
Okay.
The consciousness of saying, you know what, I'm going into this situation, the next 2 hours, I need to be that competitive.
Yeah.
And then force yourself a little bit until it becomes almost like a habit.
Okay.
So for some people, successful people, it comes so naturally, they don't even need to think of it. They are experts. But for some people who they don't have it, they need to work on that until it becomes conscious competency. So at least when they think about it, they're competitive. When they don't think about it, that doesn't come natural to them.
Yeah.
That stage is what they need to work. Sometimes they can learn by themselves, reading books or something, or sometimes working with a coach or a mentor or somebody to help them at least to raise to that occasion.
Yeah. Well, and some people, that competitive nature can be nurtured in various ways. You think about a Michael Jordan, who his competitive drive came from being cut from the basketball team.
Yeah, in high school, right?
As a high schooler. Yeah, famous story. And that idea of I'll show them. And I think everybody can have a little bit of that in their mindset of maybe there was a teacher growing up that didn't think you would, amount to anything. Maybe someone, an employer didn't think that you could ever be a leader. And that desire to prove the person wrong can stir up or create that competitive drive that will is a signature behavior of successful entrepreneurs. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, okay, that's very, very, very critical.
Yeah. What is this one's funny because I feel like I keep prodding you. And so what is the number 2 behavior?
Urgency, basically.
Yeah.
The biggest. So if you look at every successful entrepreneur, it almost feels like they're going and they're in a hurry to get somewhere because they want to get things done.
Yeah.
They want to get things done. When a successful entrepreneur, when you talk to them and you look at it, when you ask them, hey, when do you need this by? The first answer they'll say is yesterday.
Yeah.
Because of that urgency, they really want to make things happen.
Yeah.
And if you really look at it, for being successful in anything, you need to have that drive, you need to have that urgency and just focus on it.
Yeah.
And make it happen. They don't take a no for an answer. They just behave and say, okay, why not now? Why not today? Why not yesterday?
Yeah.
I'll give you one simple example because my urgency is a little bit higher, is when I was building my own house. And even before the construction started, I had a date fixed for my housewarming. How crazy it is.
Oh my goodness.
And in the process, the builder said, sir, basically the cabinets you have ordered, basically there has been a problem with some coating, painting, whatever it is, and it is going to delay by 12 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And then immediately my wife came to know, she called me and said, so I said, tell the guy to wait, I'm coming. And in less than a half hour, I went through the whole process of why the 12 weeks delay, came up with a solution and told him, this way you can do it. It'll cost us $800 more. I'm willing to pay for that. Let us do plan B. And I just left.
Wow.
And the guy said, I have never seen somebody think like this. I said, this is my housewarming party. These are the people who are coming from so many different places to be there. And I cannot change that. So I need to change the process.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Basically, in fact, we decrease the overall cycle time by a week by changing the process.
He just got a lesson in improving his processes right there. Process improvement. That's amazing. Well, urgency. So behaviors, number 1, competitive. Number 2, urgency. Number 3,
versatile.
Okay.
Basically, the versatile is you need to have a capability to go from one task to the other without skipping a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Very, very few people can do that very well. The reason being is I'm talking to a customer. I go back and solve it, and suddenly the finance comes says, "Hey, there is something wrong with the billing or an invoice or something, and I need to handle that piece of it as an entrepreneur," and then go to something else. And then the tax guy calls, or something happens on the shop floor, or a product problem comes. They should be changing swiftly between activities and stuff. And that is the versatile piece of it. You're very, very comfortable taking one, changing things. So if you are an early entrepreneur, like basically less than 10 employee entrepreneur, I went and looked at it. You wear at least 9 different hats. You're playing 9 different roles. And just imagine if you have 9 different roles and you still need to work on your vision, you need to still get the money so that you become financially viable. That is the reason why the versatile is very, very important.
Yeah. No, and I can see all of these, and especially once you do the last one, because I think this is when you think about the restaurants in particular, the small business owners of restaurants in particular that survived and the ones that didn't, the ones that survived had all of these skills that you're talking about. They were able to, we summed it up in pivot, right? How did you pivot through the pandemic if you're a small business owner, small business leader? And unless you had a lot of money that you had stored away, you had to pivot. You had to make changes to weather the storm. And so here we go. Go with the last behavior, and we'll go from there.
The 4th one is the frequent change.
Yeah.
Because this change here is change of direction. That is the pandemic piece of it and everything else. Like, I'll give you my own example from my business. I'm one of those person where I go to the company, sit with their leadership team, and do 2 days, 3 days, 4 days workshops, depending on the scope and the content.
Yeah.
And now basically 0 travel suddenly, right? So I had to go back and really change how I approach this. So I started talking to my clients and say, what can we do different? And thanks to Zoom, we would go back and immediately jump on it. But I need to really retool. See, when I was doing the old traditional way, I got them and they were there with me for 3 days sitting in a classroom. I had the whole leadership team. We started at 8 o'clock. We ended up at 5, took different breaks, lunch break, different activities, got them engaged. So everybody was there for 3 hours. But everybody sitting in their houses or wherever they are and trying to focus on a Zoom was very difficult. So I had to take my whole programs and cut it into 90 minutes and 2-hour segments. So the delivery was completely different. And they had to spend with me every day or every other day 2 hours. And I was giving them bite size so that after 90 minutes, 2 hours, they went back to what they were doing regularly.
Okay.
So that would be the change piece of it. I could go back and change. And I'm telling you, I was very, very fortunate compared to others because I grew my business by almost 60% in that year.
Yeah.
Because everybody were very, very comfortable with how I broke up the content. Everybody tried to do 8 hours on Zoom. That didn't work. Because I changed my curriculum, I changed my delivery, and changed the complete process.
Yeah.
And that really helped me. And that frequent change, like some people were saying, Raj, 2 hours is too short. We need 4 hours. I said, okay, I will adapt it and make it into a 3.5, 4 hours kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of experimentation was going on. But if you look at the motivation, I was very resourceful, right? Basically, am I using the best time? Am I getting the ROI for that?
Yeah.
Am I making the tough decisions, commanding, going to a path which nobody else has done? And then my behavior was, I am listening and I'm adapting to help them better understand what I was trying to teach them or consider.
Yeah.
So that's how the 4 behaviors, driving forces, and competencies, if you look at it, how each one of them brings together to make a successful entrepreneur, small business leader.
Yeah, I can totally see it. And, I had some companies that I worked with, or I started working with just after the pandemic. And one particular business owner works with a larger franchise, but he said, we didn't do anything. We really didn't change anything because I just thought that at any point in time, things would go back to how they were. And fortunately, the franchise did fine and they had a drive-through. So drive-throughs did fine during the pandemic, but it wasn't because they did anything proactive and they left a lot of money on the table. So that idea of being self-starting, you might say, you know, I think I'm doing pretty good in my business and I don't have, you know, half of these qualities. Well, the question that I would ask those people, if you kind of self-assess and you say, I'm only good in about half those areas, is how much better could you be? How much faster could your business grow? How much more effective could you be? What are you leaving on the table? What opportunities are you leaving on the table in the marketplace because you're neglecting to develop the skills or the competencies like self-starting or being creative and innovative in the process? And listen, here's the deal. Just like everybody doesn't need to be a leader. Everybody doesn't need to have these qualities. You need a team around you that has qualities that differ from this list. There's 49 different qualities in this assessment that you do, Raj, and these are only 15. So there are 34 other qualities that are fantastic that people need to, you know, that we need to have a whole entire functioning organization. And but we're talking specifically about these successful researched and tested and market proven just by our own experience, our own understanding. This is fantastic, Raj. Anything you want to tell us before we go today? You gave us the 15. You kind of pulled back the curtain on how you found these 15 qualities and traits. We talked a little bit about how you can develop them. Obviously, in your training, you go much deeper and help people understand this in your coaching and training. But anything you want to leave us with today on these traits?
So basically, one of the experiments I have done behind the scenes is I looked at some of the companies who are very, very successfully growing much faster than their industry was growing. So generally, I go back and look at it. If there is an industry, let us say in consumer goods, I'm just taking that as an example. The consumer goods was going by 3 to 4%, but they grew by 15 to 20% every year.
Okay.
So what I did was I took their leadership team profile and I did an average of all their leadership team. I did a group report, group summary.
Okay. Yeah.
And what I noticed was, as a leadership team, basically these top 4 also came to the surface from a driving forces perspective.
Interesting.
So the companies where I saw this, my sample size is small. It is only 16 companies I have done that.
Okay.
But all 16 companies were growing much faster than their competitors and the industry was growing because they had intentional, resourceful, commanding, receptive. On an average, as the leadership team, those 4 came to the surface of the 12 driving forces we talk about.
That's great. So it's almost the culture or the personality of the organization.
Exactly. The leadership team was always, everybody was thinking about resourceful. Everybody was talking about receptive. Everybody was very intentional. So it is almost like getting your leadership team marching towards the same thing, being completely aligned, and everybody was motivated for the same thing. And the business was growing much faster.
That's so cool. That's great. Wow. Awesome. Okay. So, so that's something that you do. Like if an organization, if someone said, hey, Raj, I love this assessment. I want to assess myself, see where I'm at. And then I also want to, you know, have my team assess and kind of see where we're at. That's something you can do for people, right?
No, that is exactly any client of mine.
Yeah.
The first thing is we get to identify the leadership team, the entrepreneur, the business owner, CEO, whatever title they have, and his direct or her direct reports, and everybody goes through this. I don't start any program for anybody without this.
Perfect.
All my clients across the globe have to go through this. The leadership team has to get their reports. They need to understand that because that is the fastest way for them to really understand themselves at a deeper level. And then they know how to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
If nothing else, you can see at least 8 to 10% better results just because of the improved communication.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And we are going to do a podcast all about communication. Both of us 100% agree that communication is foundational to leadership and effective leadership. And so we'll do that in the future. But this has been fantastic, Raj. Thank you so much for sharing these qualities. And I'm sure everyone out there is just, you know, thinking about, hey, how can I grow in these areas? I know I am. I want to continue to grow in these areas and make sure that I am modeling the behaviors of a successful entrepreneur and small business leader. So thank you, Raj. And with that, with that, we'll go and say thank you to everybody listening. And I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thank you, Drew. It was fantastic to share this. And if anybody has any questions, visit our blog or send me an email, send me through LinkedIn, whichever way you want. And I'm more than willing to go back and help and provide inputs.
If you would like to find out more about how to implement growth as a process in your business, I want to highly recommend the Entrepreneur Growth Alliance program. And you can find out about this program and more at VRT9/EGA.